Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Watch, Barter and Banter. This is our, what now, Caleb?
Third episode.
Third episode, yeah. How have you been during these circumstances?
I've been alive and functional, so yeah.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Like anybody who has been directly affected by this lockdown, I'm pretty sure many of us have once again, if not more so, have turned to our favorite movies. And I thought it'd be interesting to choose two movies that were from our childhood.
Yeah.
So this is a nostalgic themed episode, 80s edition?
Yeah.
Yeah, both these movies were from the 80s. So for today, first on the docket is
The Goonies.
And this was your choice for me because I've never seen it.
Yep.
Quick rundown, what is The Goonies about?
So The Goonies is about a group of misfits from a small town that are in danger of having their homes taken down so that they could build some sort of golf course resort place. And these kids end up going on an adventure to look for some lost treasure in hopes to reclaim the land that is rightfully theirs.
Topical.
Yep.
Is that not? That's always a topical theme.
Yeah.
What was your exposure to this movie as a kid?
When I first saw the movie, I remember it was in elementary school. One of my elementary school best friends was saying, "Oh, The Goonies, this is a great movie." And we ended up watching it in class for some sort of class like movie day. And it was like, I didn't really want to watch the movie, to be completely honest. I was like, it's The Goonies. Who cares about this? But ended up watching it and loving this movie. I was like, oh, this is like such a kid adventure movie. And it felt like a grand adventure you would want to go on with your friends. So this movie is kind of sentimental. It reminds me of just that time in class where we all watched it together, the adventure, just thinking about childhood and the shenanigans you'd want to get into with people. Yeah, I genuinely really love this movie.
Yeah, the appeal of this movie, and again, first time watching it, it's immediately instantaneous, right? Like, this was something I think every little kid wished would happen to them. You know, you just find some random mystical object in a dusty attic or basement somewhere, and it just leads you onto this crazy adventure. That was something I think every little North American kid wanted to happen to them, and this movie definitely, I think, is a prime example of that type of fantasy.
Yeah. May I ask you, so did you actually enjoy the movie?
Maybe not as much as I wanted to, and that's always the problem with watching classics, I find, especially any type of movie where everyone is going to tell you, every person off the street to like somebody who works for the Criterion Collection, they're going to bug you to, you have to watch this, it's essential, and then you finally watch the thing and it doesn't have the effect on you the way it's supposed to, and then you kind of feel dumb about it. And I don't know whether it's like maybe due to age or just taste. Like, I do like the movie. I'm glad that I watched it and I wouldn't mind watching it again. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I liked a lot of aspects of the movie, but I feel like the flow kind of really wasn't as smooth as I wanted it to be.
So what is it about? Like, what do you mean by the flow wasn't as smooth as you would want it to be?
I guess maybe like the setup and payoffs weren't, as you used the word manicured at one point, right? Because like we were talking about the influence that this movie has had on so many other movies and TV shows. Like, of course, Stranger Things was like the first thing that came to mind, right? Goonies fingerprints are all over Stranger Things. And I was comparing to like the frenetic energy of Stranger Things to the frenetic energy of the Goonies, and I was saying how I was having trouble following the Goonies a bit just because all the kids were bouncing off the walls too much. But I was like, oh no, Stranger Things was able to pull that type of energy off, but you're still able to follow them. Yeah. But you were saying, you made a really great point that the pacing of Stranger Things was still a lot more manicured.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where hindsight's 2020. The Goonies set the benchmark for a lot of kid adventure movies for well, even now, even Stranger Things as a prime example. When you have hindsight, you can make things a little bit more cohesive. I think the thing that you were mentioning is that the kids were really bantery and would talk over one another and were just all over each other. And I think for me, that's one of the major selling points of this movie. I actually really liked that because it reminded me of my childhood, and it reminded me of, like, I've done a lot of work with kids at like Bible camps and whatnot. And that's what kids are like.
Oh yeah, no, it's the performances in this movie are incredibly authentic and incredible considering their age range, and just having kids on set, that's always another added challenge to just making a movie, which is already an uphill climb. Right? I know Richard Donner, apparently the director of this movie, it was not a pleasant experience for him.
Yeah, I think he enjoyed the kids, but kids can be a handful. And I imagine having to get having to get kids to do stuff is one of the most emotionally and mentally taxing things. I remember even this one year when I was at Bible camp, I was working with some really small kids. And oh my goodness, it was like having to think for 5 individual people with 5 individual needs on top of myself, trying to mobilize them to move to one place. Okay, we have an event here, we have an event here, we have an event here. And you're like, this is... So like working at a professional level with the kids like that would be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun. And very...
And fun.
Yeah, quote unquote. Yeah, but it's... Yeah, I could only imagine how challenging this was. You know, there's that, of course, old saying in Hollywood, never work with animals and never work with children.
You know, they both have wranglers, so you know.
Yeah, and it's the 80s. I would hope each one of them had wranglers to watch over them, but like it was the 80s. And wild time. Yeah, they could do anything with children back then. They've done a lot of really questionable shit to just actors in general back then. So, but yeah, what these kids, these actors at their age at the time were able to pull off was nothing short of amazing, right? And you have Sean Astin and my personal favorite, Ki Hui Kwan, who I know is Short Round from Indiana Jones. Corey Feldman.
It's just weird that Josh Brolin was in this movie. You know, I know. Thanos himself was a Goonie.
Yeah, it's always crazy to see where the biggest A-lister started, right? It's like when you, I don't know, when you're watching whatever Hollywood program, and then there's this segment of, this is where they started, and then they show, like, Tom Hanks in, like, a SpaghettiOs commercial or something like that. You're like, wow, they were mortal once.
Yeah, true enough.
Yeah.
It's weird that Sean Astin was in this movie. You're like, oh my goodness, he was, like, such a baby-faced little kid. You're
God,
like, oh.
Yeah. I'm not surprised. Like he's considered an 80s, 90s darling, right? Yeah, and just this movie alone, there's no wonder why they wanted him for what, season 2
of Stranger
Things, or season 3, I forget which one. Season 2, yeah, that's just perfect.
In terms of themes, what did you feel was a strong theme for you that really resonated with you within this movie?
I definitely think friendship. Friendship and courage were definitely themes of this movie. Yeah, and the fact that, what's his name, Mikey, played by Sean Astin, his whole catchphrase, Goonies never say die, and how he was the wide-eyed, optimistic leader. That's such a trope in a lot of these types of movies. Every time there's a gang of kids, there's that one leader who's gonna believe they're gonna make it against the odds. Yeah, to just stick together. And then, of course, also, ironically enough, it's very anti-capitalist or anti-rich, despite the fact that it's so much product placement in it.
Well, you know what? You gotta pay for the film somehow.
Yeah, I know. You gotta pay for the film somehow. Yeah, those were the themes I took from the movie. And it was pretty all, like, you know, it is what it is, you get what you get, right? I wish I could have some clever interpretation about it, but yeah, it was just about a ragtag team of kids that wanted to stop their town from getting foreclosed just so they can build a country club. Like, those things must have happened.
I imagine.
Yeah.
But it's always such a weird thing to think about, because I understand to the point where if you can't pay your mortgage or whatever, the bank technically owns your building.
But the entire neighborhood?
Yeah, so it's just like
the entire town? Like, is that legal to buy out like a giant portion?
Well, I guess if you can't pay for it, it's like.
But every single person couldn't pay for it? I just
potentially
found that
it could
odd.
the town that could just not be making money. There's some towns where it's like the main industry is like shut down for whatever reason, something new comes out.
Right, yeah.
It's like if there was a town that had Blockbuster exclusively and that was their main source of revenue, then
oh my god, that would be very
Netflix
sad.
comes out, hey, we got Stranger Things now.
Yeah, or you hear about like mining towns getting closed.
Coal clown towns, so it could be one of those situations. So
yeah, they didn't go too much into that.
Yeah, I think the thing about this movie that it's very much in terms of the plot, it's very toned down for kids to understand. It's like, the city is it's gonna be sold. We're gonna have to move away, and it's like, okay. Oh, well, we found a treasure map conveniently on the day before the papers are supposed to be signed. Let's go look for this treasure that was full of booby traps. Yeah. What do you think about the villains in this?
The villains in this, they were fun. I don't really remember too much about them. You know what they did kind of remind me of? You have like the tough mom and her idiot sons. Yeah, so there were 3 of them. Their dynamic really reminded me of the quote-unquote villains in the Ghibli movie Castle in the Sky. La Puta, have you ever watched that one? But it like in that one too, it's very much about these sky pirates, and they're chasing down these 2 kids because the girl has this magical stone that can lead to a floating island in the sky with a lot of treasure. Yeah, I feel like these ideas were very much an 80s things for kids. But in any case, their entire dynamic from the Goonies, it reminded me of these villains from the Ghibli movie La Puta, Castle in the Sky. And in that movie, they had a group of villains that was led by like this robust, tough broad of a woman, and she had these idiot sons that were basically her team, and she would like bark orders at them and they'd be like scrambling just to follow her orders, but she was definitely the brains of the operation. It really reminded me of that. I was like, oh, interesting.
I like the intro scene of this movie where they get the one son out of jail and they're driving away. And then the mom's just like driving and eating a salty.
Yeah.
Those crackers.
It's just like whatever. She's just like,
whatever, this is just par for the course for us.
Yeah,
exactly. Actually, that opening sequence is so good. I like how it establishes all the main characters, and it really gives you a view of a little bit of their personalities.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a fantastic opening, and it really reels you in. And it's so clever. The chase scene just passing by all of these kids, and they have no idea that the worlds are about to collide. My favorite part is with the moment with Mouth, where he's in the kitchen and his dad or whatnot tells him to turn off the TV that has also a black and white car scene.
Oh yeah, and he's like,
and he turns it off, and then the actual car chase is happening right outside his window, and he has no idea. That was brilliant.
Oh man.
Yeah. And not only is this movie filled with a lot of big names in front of the camera, the people behind the camera, holy crap, is impressive.
Well, it is Spielberg, so he produced the movie.
Along with Kathleen Kennedy. And Richard Donner is no slouch either. He directed the first 2 Superman movies with Christopher Reeve. He's done The Omen, Lethal Weapon. So like legendary people behind this movie.
And made another legendary movie themselves, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to watching these older movies too, when they're all obviously a product of its time in terms of like some specific jokes about women or kids who are overweight or with disabilities, like how do you cope with that?
Well, I think it comes down to knowing that it's a product of its time. We can look back on it and it's like, yeah, we shouldn't have people shouldn't have been treating one another the way they did.
Yeah.
But you have to recognize, like, humanity, we're always on a constant stream of progress.
Yeah.
So as much so as we can look back and say something was atrocious, which it is, we can just look back and say, this was what it was. And we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. I often felt bad for Chunk.
Yeah.
The way he was written. At the same time, too, they wrote a lot of amazing things for his character.
Yeah.
Like, he was...
Captain Chunk.
Yeah, and he was brave and he was full of personality. Even when he was a victim, he just was filled with so much personality. He was great. But, like, yeah, you see, like, not just him, but all of the tropes in this movie. Maybe they weren't even tropes when this movie was made, but you see it repeated constantly throughout so many other 80s movies about kids and the 90s and the early 2000s. And yeah, again, right up to Stranger Things and even Super 8, right?
Oh, right.
Super 8, which is, of course, I think a callback to the 70s. That movie took place in the 70s, I think. I think so. I'm just like remembering the costumes. I think it was the 70s.
I don't remember. I really liked Super 8.
I like Super 8 too. But like then I remember last night too we watched Recess. And again, Recess, that TV show, just TJ. Everything right down to how his design to his voice just sounded exactly like Sean Astin, the leader type.
Inspire the inspiring,
who can rally
the group together in order to accomplish a common goal.
Yeah, and then like to make things confusing, Mikey from Recess, the chubby kid, always has food on his mind, and that's such a prevalent stereotype.
There's some kids that just
so
like food.
Many. I get that, but like when that's like their only defining factor, like yeah, I think I never watched this particular movie, but I watched a review of it. Richie Rich.
You never watched Richie Rich?
I never watched Richie Rich. Yeah, the Macaulay Culkin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I know there's once again like a fat kid in that one where he's just like constantly just talking about food, and that's his character.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Just sometimes things are made a little bit one-dimensional for kids.
Right, yeah. Which I kind of get, but kids are so intelligent,
And they're also kids.
Well, yeah, they're kids
yeah, I know
too.
I know kids are very intelligent.
But I feel like I think the kid movies that truly leave an impact on us are the ones that aren't afraid to be honest with us and treat children as an intelligent audience, which they are. And I feel like Goonies, yes, while it has its problems, certainly, especially compared to our modern sensibilities. This movie, you could tell the people behind it, they really tried and wanted to make a quality story for children. And they weren't afraid to scare the kids because it was the 80s. Like, they just traumatized kids, whatever. Yeah, they can take it. They can take it, whatever. But this movie had some fantastic atmosphere and and knew how to cater to children and entertain them, and it's a great joyride.
Yeah, this movie just makes me think of it made you realize like this is an actualization of like all the fantasy games that you would play with your friends. So that's one thing I liked about it. I like even like the themes, in terms of themes like the idea of friendship, the idea of being brave and sticking together. Like Goonies never say die. It's like don't give up. That's like I really like those aspirational aspects of this movie, just trying to overcome whatever circumstances. And one thing I really appreciate about this movie, it seems like every character had something to contribute in terms of the wider scope of accomplishing the goal. Even like Mouth, like you find out he could speak Spanish, and you find at the beginning of the movie he's just interpreting
that scene.
My goodness, it's
made me really uncomfortable. I'll be honest. Like again, I get like the second time watching it too, I realized that okay, this is actually cleverly disguised exposition, right?
Yeah,
because
that's true. Yeah.
You needed to know that he spoke Spanish fluently, and that way he was able to read the map, right? And that is his contribution to getting things rolling, right? But it's just like him trolling that poor housekeeper.
Oh my goodness.
That poor woman, she's just there to make a living, kid, and you're just...
What a nasty kid.
Oh, what awful. And then another one of my favorite politically incorrect moments is at the end when Josh Brolin's character, his name is Brand or whatnot, the big brother. Yeah. He starts making out with, what's her name? Andy, the cheerleader. That he's been crushing on the entire movie. They start making out, and his parents are looking on, and the mom goes... let her parents worry about it. It's just like,
oh man.
Well, double standards, whatever. It's not our kid that's gonna get pregnant, whatever. It's like, let her parents worry about it.
Oh man.
Oh my god.
Yeah, times have changed.
But yeah, like in terms of for me, like when I watch any movies this far back or even farther, yeah, like I just try to, if anything, I just find it funny, you know.
That used to be the standard for, like, that used to be commonplace for people to think and behave in such a way.
Yeah, and like it's, you know, it's not to say that we have everything figured out right now. We sure as hell do not. I don't think we need to get into detail about that. But like, yeah, it is funny to just laugh at those moments to see, wow, that was acceptable back then, you know, as opposed to now. At least I think we're way more aware and definitely sensitive to that type of mentality and knowing, you know, the harm it can do if we're not careful.
That's fair.
Yeah, so, but all in all, yeah, this was a great choice. Like, it was always the type of movie I always saw the cover art for the VHS, like, everywhere. Yeah, it was just never something that ended up being rented, I guess. So yeah, but it's nice to finally watch something that was that's so iconic, and now I know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, what movie did you recommend for me?
The NeverEnding Story.
Yep, I had not seen this. I actually, even echoing what you just said, I think I knew of the NeverEnding Story.
Of course,
and
yeah.
I think I had seen like clips of it on television, and it just never really drew my eye.
Yeah.
So I just went through life and avoided it. When it was presented, I never actually engaged with it, and I just had no interest in looking to see this movie. So it was good that you recommended it to me.
Yeah. So for me, yeah, the NeverEnding Story, I think my mom rented it when I was pretty young, like 6, 5, and yeah, I don't think it was a movie I watched again and again as a kid, but it definitely left enough of an impression that I look back on it with fond memories. It's not one of those things you were exposed to as a kid and you forget about it. Like, it's so iconic that it's always there in the background. Yeah, like sometimes a cartoon movie would pop up and I'd be like, oh my god, I forgot that existed. But with NeverEnding Stories, I would say it is very much as iconic as the Goonies. If anything, not to spoil it for you, but it is very heavily referenced in the latest season of Stranger Things. I'm not going to say how, but
I still need to finish season 3 of Stranger Things.
Yeah.
I've been so behind.
Right. Yeah, so the NeverEnding Story is basically about this shy, introverted kid named Bastian, who is dealing with the death of his mother. And one day, after escaping a run-in with some bullies, he wanders into this bookstore with a curmudgeon-y owner and ends up swiping or borrowing, quote-unquote borrowing, this book from him entitled The NeverEnding Story. And then he escapes into the dusty attic of his school to skip class and unknowingly starts the reading session of his life.
Yeah, you can put it that way.
Yeah. So, what was your initial impression of this movie?
I really liked this movie.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I liked the playback between the Bastion's world and then the story world and how you'd see Bastion's reaction to it. It kind of reminds me of The Princess Bride in that regard.
Right. Yeah.
Just the back and forth and seeing how the book was affecting Bastion and how. I in terms of themes, I really liked a lot of the themes in this movie. Before we go into the themes, I really liked the set, the design of the sets and then all the things, how things were done practically.
Oh my God,
really appreciate that.
Well, they say that all the time. Like, that is the charm of so many 80s and even 90s movies, that everything was done practically. Like, they use actual puppets and, you know, machinery to create whatever fantastical creature. And you know that it's there. It might look maybe sometimes even dubious, but you know that there's something there.
Yeah.
Instead of like a floating tennis ball that they have to react to.
Yeah.
Like, the sets in this movie are amazing.
Yeah.
You know, even everything from like the attic set, there's just so much atmosphere. You know, it's dusty. You have the light coming in through the window, to the amazing fantastical sets, especially the exterior sets that were, of course, built inside, are just amazing because they would have lakes running through. Or like a full-on, you know, marsh pit. We'll get to that part. A full-on freaking swamp indoors. And you're like, how the heck did they do this? Can you imagine?
Money.
And can you imagine?
Lots of money and time and effort.
And like, now I'm thinking too, God, did the cleanup after that? Especially the Swamp of Sadness.
I wonder if how many sets like that are reused or just disassembled and reappropriated for something else. Like, I would hope that somebody would get a second use out of that same set and even just throw a few things in. But
yeah,
it was a very amazing endeavor. Like, even that rock guy was just eating the granite.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I liked about this movie. I like the themes of this movie. It was more sophisticated, I would say, than the Goonies. Just the storytelling and the type of story. Even though I do like the Goonies' rambunctious energy, I did like the focused, narrowed scope of this movie and how there's a lot of different layers to the metaphors within the story.
Definitely. I like how we kind of picked movies that are on opposing sides of the spectrum in a way.
Yeah.
One is very high energy, bouncing off the walls, go, go, go. And with A NeverEnding Story, it's still very much about a journey, about adventure, going from point A to point B, but just the tone of it, it's a lot more slow and meditative and very philosophical, this movie. I haven't seen this movie in years. This is when I watched it with you, that was the first time in literally years I've seen it from beginning to end. And I was like, there were times I found myself getting really bored. I'm like, good God, can you like pick up the pace here, please?
You felt bored watching. I didn't feel bored like at any point in time watching this movie.
Really? I felt like, oh man, this is slow. Especially, I think, didn't we watch it right after the Goonies? So I think...
Oh, I get it. It's definitely not as high energy.
Yeah, so for Goonies, it was like too all over the place. And then with...
you burned yourself out watching the Goonies. You're like, okay.
Yeah. But was there a particular scene in this movie that stood out to you?
Oh, man. I think the end was when Bastion and the Child Empress... Yeah. When it had the movie goes super meta, and you're like, oh,
super meta.
You're like, oh, they can. I guess they hint at it like throughout the
of
movie.
Course, yeah.
But when she's like, Bastion, you need to give me my. Why don't you do what's right?
Yeah. Oh my God, when she breaks that fourth wall. Yeah. Yeah, and they always say when you do that type of shot when you have the actor look right down the barrel of the camera, it is incredibly jarring.
Yeah. You're like, oh, somebody's talking to me. You're like, who am I?
Yeah.
And it's just like I really like that. This movie,
it's super meta.
Yeah, that I think that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I think the thing I like about the movie is just the idea of the main a core theme is just overcoming grief. Yeah. So and like trauma. So and it's interesting how like Atreyu's Bastion's proxy and of like who he wants to be in a lot of ways.
Yes, definitely. That was foreshadowed too by some of the production design and prop design. Yeah. When we first see Bastion like waking up from a nightmare at the very beginning, we see a picture of a Native American above his bed, and then there's also a Native American embroidered into his backpack.
Yeah.
Or something. Yeah. And yeah, like, Atreyu is definitely his proxy. And I think in general, yeah, one of the themes of NeverEnding Story is very much about the audience embodying the protagonist, the hero, right? That is, yeah, especially, like, you could say this with any type of medium, storytelling medium, theater, movie watching, but especially, I think, reading, just the power of reading, because there's just there's something way more intimate, I think, about reading the story, because you're not only creating the images in your head, but you also know exactly what the characters are feeling, because it's the
illustrator, the way it's narrated to you through the author. But you're the one who ultimately creates the universe in your own head. Even the fact that you hear distinct characters' voices. Like, this person sounds like this person sounds like this in your head when you're reading a story. Yeah. So it's like, it's the world you create in a lot of ways. I like that, going back to the idea of the proxy. It's interesting that Artaxis, the horse, when when Artax, the horse, gets consumed in the pit of sadness, and you're like, that was that was a sad moment. It was quite a sad moment. And
did you ever hear about that scene?
I can't say if I remember that. I remember hearing about that scene, but you're like, oh no, the horse is gone. Yeah. And I'm like, oh snap.
In terms of traumatizing death scenes, where would you rank that one?
Ooh.
Like, comparing it to other death scenes in children's movies, Old Yeller, Bambi's mom, Littlefoot's mom, Simba's dad.
Oh man,
like, where would you rank that? Because for me, I do remember watching that scene. That was very intense for me as a kid. I don't think I ran away crying from it, but it's definitely a scene that sticks with you, right? Because killing a child's pet in a movie, like, again, that's another cardinal rule, right? You do not kill the dog, right? And Artax, that's just, a horse, that's just another beloved animal for children, so you do not kill the horse.
I don't know where I would rank it. Kind of reminds me of one of my friends was telling me years ago when he was a kid when the first Transformers movie came out, and spoiler alert, they killed Optimus Prime in the first like 20 minutes, and he said that, like, it was a sea of boys weeping.
Oh, really? That's awesome! I love it.
Oh my god, it's so sad.
I love it.
You literally killed off Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness. So, like, yeah, I don't know where I would rank it. Because I honestly don't remember how I felt when Simba died, or
Mufasa died.
Mufasa died, or Bambi. I don't remember that far back. How I felt that far back, to be completely honest.
Really?
Yeah, I remember seeing those movies, but yeah, I don't think I had like a super deep emotional response when.
Really?
Yeah, not the same way other people have.
Yeah, I feel like, especially when you're a kid and you're, grasping just concept of death, like the idea that they're not going to be there anymore, right? They're just gone. It's always pretty intense. Yeah, I think they don't necessarily have to be a traumatizing scene, but there's always that ping you feel. But with Artax, I do remember that one affected me a lot. And it was always like, I always considered it like the scary scene. I think like, there's that other villain in this movie, the wolf creature.
Yeah, he's not that menacing.
I don't ever remember being scared of that.
I don't think the wolf is very scary. He's a figure within the movie specifically. I feel he's more of a figure of I want to see the Knights of Ren in the Star Wars.
Okay.
The new trilogy. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
It's like you made up to be these great villains, and then really they're nothing that great in terms of like they're inconsequential in many ways.
I guess.
But I guess for the wolf, he was just more so the idea that the doom and gloom is coming. Like he's the embodiment of
he's the soldier of the nothing, basically. Yeah.
This movie, I really like how philosophical this movie is, and even just like the fact that Bastian's mom passes away, and it like that is the horse Artax is like kind of like his mom dying. He really emphasizes with.
I didn't even. Yeah, that's such an obvious connection. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot of things you can just see him, like even just like when you like the personifying, like having even just terms of representation, like being able to relate to a character, even when why am I bad? Okay, I didn't sleep well last night. So,
it's okay.
Atreyu, when he goes to the mirror and he can see Bastion.
Yeah, that was a great shot.
Yeah, and it's just like Bastion's like, that'd be so weird reading a book about you reading like somebody's looking at you. That would be like...
Yeah, that'd be trippy.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine being a kid in the audience at that time.
Yeah.
What, in 1984?
It's like, this is breaking my brain.
Yeah, I know. Like, for little kids, that must have been such a moment for them in the theater. I was, like, not even born when this movie was made, when this movie was released. So, speaking of the mom, so they said, Bastian says he gave the child empress his mother's name, but he shouts out Moon Child.
Maybe she was a hippie.
I don't.
To say.
Yeah, I was like, what? That's so weird. Okay, all right, sure. Maybe she was just a hippie. Like it's interesting too in terms of how this movie deals with boyhood compared to the Goonies, right? They deal with it in very different ways. I feel like with the Goonies, again, that's like, even though both these movies are like fantasy type movies, NeverEnding Story, it's literally fantasy. But like with the Goonies, I feel like it fulfills the ideal of what American boyhood is supposed to be. Like you're out there with your pals and you're off on this big adventure hunting for treasure and fighting criminals, right? Whereas again with NeverEnding Story, it's a way more contemplative movie, and if anything, I think it kind of challenges the expectations of what boys were supposed to be back in the 80s, right? Like especially at the beginning in the kitchen scene. He tells his dad, I had like another dream about mom. And the dad's basically like, get over it.
Yeah, I think even you mentioning earlier that there's this movie, we found contrasting movies about like, there's the group and then it's all the way to the loner. So this is very much a movie about the loner and how a loner relates to life.
Right.
So I won't say I was a loner necessarily, but there's been times in certain contexts I've been more solo than I've been with a group, and it's interesting because like this is a very much so a movie about just the idea of men. How do men grieve, or how do boys grieve?
Yeah.
Because Bastian, like his dad's like, you don't. The dad could be in like complete and utter turmoil, realistically.
Of course.
But he's just like, I can't be in complete and utter turmoil because there's things that need to be done, so I need to move on. Right. And I think this movie is a very much so the idea of moving on. Even just looking at the idea of the nothing. The nothing is like his dad's talking to him at the beginning of the movie. It's like, you're not doing the stuff in the school. You're not doing this. You didn't join the swim team. I'm disappointed. And it's like, but nothing's overtaking him. It's like he's so consumed with grief he can't function anymore. So he has to like come to the point where he can learn to grieve. And I think even just acknowledging that.
No, if anything, I think the dad needs to learn to grieve.
Well, but this is not the dad's story as much as it is Bastian's at this for this iteration of the. But it's like for him, Bastian, he needs to come to the. He's been like, I think what I see is that he's so overcome with grief. He just needs to. I think he needs hope.
He needs hope, exactly. I think he needs an outlet in order to deal and confront his grief, which is what the never-ending story is for him, basically, right?
Yeah.
The fact that he is very much embodying Atreyu, and Atreyu literally has to fight the nothing and save the kingdom, and also again another connection to the mother, save the child empress who ends up getting his mother's name. So in a way, saving this little girl is almost kind of like him making up for the fact that he couldn't save his mom from whatever vague movie illness she died from.
You just know she's gone.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Can we talk about the breakfast smoothie that the dad was making?
The orange juice and egg?
Yeah, what the hell?
What is that?
What is that?
I don't know. It's such a
anybody who's listening, is it a white people thing?
I don't know.
I've never seen, I get the raw egg, I don't even actually mind the texture and taste of raw egg. I'll drink it, but why would you put it in orange juice? Honestly, is it a thing?
That is the thing. I'm still, you can see these things of boxers drinking a bunch of raw eggs. And Rocky and whatnot, but
that was
orange juice?
It's just such a weird, distracting thing to have. I get that you wanted your character to fix himself up a breakfast while they're exchanging dialogue, right? So audiences will have a thing to look at, right? That's the thing they teach you in film school. But it's just the most random thing to have him crack an egg into the blender with orange juice. I'm like, what is he doing? It just kind of distracted me from the emotional scene. Yeah, I just found that so funny.
I was like, why is... That's a strange thing to consume for breakfast.
Okay.
Isn't toast sufficient?
Yeah, exactly.
But why not fry the egg? And
fry
eat
the egg
and drink the orange juice.
I know,
but
right?
It's maybe it's just more efficient for him. But I guess there's some of those things that are would it actually taste bad? I don't want to venture to investigate personally.
Yeah.
But there's certain foods you even certain people's cultural food. You're that combination of things does not look appetizing, and when you try it, you're oh, it's actually more satisfying.
Well, in the South, I know they have a peanut butter mayonnaise sandwich, which apparently is delicious. I'm still afraid to try it. I have the ingredients right now. I don't know if I'd be willing to.
Peanut butter and cheese sandwich.
Ew.
That is surprisingly decent.
I guess I could see that because it's if you just think of it as nuts with cheese, yeah, I'll eat nuts and cheese together. Yeah.
It was weird. I remember my best friend in elementary school, he's had a what's it called, peanut butter and cheese sandwich. I'm like, this that looks offensive to me. And he's like, try it, it's good. And I tried it, I'm like, it is good. You don't really distinctly taste the flavors are actually pretty parallel. It was the marble cheese.
Right, because cheese can be salty too.
Yeah, so the flavors are rather complementary, and it was kind of weird because and the texture is actually quite nice as well. I'm like,
I feel like the texture would freak me out, but yeah.
But the weirdest sandwich I had was when one of my friends years later, he peanut butter, jelly, and bologna, and I was like, "Are you insane?" Yeah. I was like, I tried it. I'm like, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. It's just the bologna. It just adds a little bit more savoriness and a smoother texture to the. Okay. It's strange. I'm like, I don't It's one of those brain breaking foods. You're like, I was wrong. I was like, I wish I wasn't, but I was wrong.
You know what? If anybody's gonna make that sandwich, it's gonna be Bastion's dad. He's just gonna
drink it with his egg.
Drink your egg, son. Shut up about your dead mom. I also want to talk about the kitchen that they were in. Mm-hmm. Oh my god, that was such a throwback to me. I had those cupboards in my kitchen.
Oh, man.
I grew up in a kitchen looking like that with the exact same cupboard doors with the wooden.
The slats where you grab
the slats them. Yeah, oh my god, that was so great. And another cool piece of trivia, this the real world scenes in this movie filmed in our hometown, Vancouver. All over the place. I know school. I think it's called the Queen Mary Elizabeth School. That's in North Vancouver. I've never seen it. That's way too far away for me. But the bully chasing scene right at the beginning, that is Gastown. That was so cool to see. We walk down that place all the time.
Yeah, it's just like, it's weird seeing someplace in a movie.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this movie ages well. It's definitely, I don't know if I could show this to a young kid. I mean, I guess every kid is different, right? But because it is a slow movie.
It is a slow burn.
It is a slow burn. I guess you would think at least the fantastical aspects of this movie will keep the kids engaged. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend it to a kid who was usually very hyper or had problems paying attention. I mean, I considered myself as a kid who had trouble paying attention. But for me, though, you put me in front of a movie, though, as a kid, then I am locked in and loaded. In school, no, not at all. But, you put me in front of a TV, you could not tear me away. And, yeah, I'm glad this was definitely a movie I grew up with. In terms of, iconic children's films, this was a good one to have. What did you think of the casting choice for Atreyu? Speaking of, again, this movie being a thing of its time. Yeah. Very Caucasian-looking Native American kid.
Put the kid in the sun for a few hours.
Yeah,
he's good.
Look, he's a little bit tan. He's brunette. It's close enough.
It's one of those weird situations. I don't know why they couldn't have casted an actual Native American kid.
I wonder why, Caleb. But for what it's worth, the performances again done by everybody in this movie is great. Very emotional performances from the kids. They asked these kids to do a lot. They were crying and screaming. The kid who played Atreyu, Noah Hathaway. First off, at the expense of sounding like a pervert, gosh, if I was a younger little girl, maybe if I had watched this movie when I was slightly older, maybe when I was maybe around 8 or something, I think I would have totally had the hots for Atreyu. What a dreamy looking little boy. He
was a handsome kid, yeah.
Yeah, and the hair on the kid is so silky.
Yeah, I remember I had a friend in high school who had my friend's hair was longer than that, but it was that kind of this full body, literally did no work, didn't shampoo it consistently.
Just woke up like that.
It was that, and the girls spend hours literally trying to comb their hair and work, and he was just
yeah.
And he's we always called his locks of hair.
Yeah,
nice
that's
deep
great.
brown locks. Guy, you had.
Yeah, that's great.
You won the genetic lottery there.
I definitely. Well, with Noah Hathaway too. They asked him to do a lot. Yeah. The screaming and the crying during the Swamp of Sadness scene. That's a lot. You know? And then the same with the guy, Barrett Oliver, who played Bastian. Yeah. He had a lot of crying scenes too. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot to get from child actors. Yeah,
I really like the Barrett Oliver. Sorry.
Yeah, Barrett Oliver.
Oh my goodness. Names. His performance was really good. I really feel you really felt like he was he was going through all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. How did you feel about the old man in the bookstore?
Yeah, it's okay, boomer. I love characters like him. Yeah. I do. Again, I would hope that I didn't turn completely into this guy. I would still want, at his age, to still be open-minded and be enthusiastic for young people, because you should. I don't think that is a duty that should ever end for elders, is that you need to watch out for young people and encourage them and guide them, right? But I could totally understand why he.
His bookstore was probably just overrun with kids at one point in time, and they went to the comic store.
Yeah, pretty much. Or he's just fed up with life, and he knows what he likes, and he's gonna stick to it. I get it.
Yeah.
But no, he had hope for Bastian. He totally. He was in on it. He was just like, don't you, whatever you do, kid.
Don't steal this book right here. I'm putting it right here as I answer that phone and will have my back turned to you. Yeah. Make sure you don't take this book and go home and read it.
Yeah, I've only made this book sound like the most dangerous, exciting thing you could ever come across, but don't you dare read it. It's like, okay. No. Yeah, I love it.
Thinking about it, the idea that the book was unsafe. I like even thinking about what happens and what transpires in the book. You're like, I get what he was talking about. It's just like Bastian had to go on a personal, emotional journey in order to read that book. It wasn't a safe book. Like you remember that the conversation he had. It's like you can stop reading it and you're not engaged in it. Like, this book wasn't that. This book actually included him in it. It was like he was in the text.
Yeah, like, you're the story, kid. Yeah.
So it's interesting. And it I guess there's a second book, like the second movie, sorry. And
yeah.
It'd be interesting. I haven't seen that one either.
Yeah.
So I don't know if is he a character that pops in the second movie?
I'm pretty sure the book owner pops up again. Yeah.
But the fact that he was reading it beforehand, like, how does that affect him? So I wonder what...
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how...
I feel like it's the type of book where it's different for each reader. Which, again, that is very much the nature of reading a book.
That's fair, yeah.
Right. It could be the same book, but it's going to be very different for every single reader out there. Which is why interpretations of the Bible is so messed up. So, no, yeah, it again, yeah, this movie, it's very multi-layered. It speaks about the nature of storytelling and grief and overcoming grief. And another thing that I thought was very, again, heady for a children's movie, when Atreyu has to pass those 3 tests, and the second test, after he manages to survive the laser shooting statues with the breasts, he has to look into that mirror, and if he cannot run away from what he sees, that means he's past it, because like, what was it that old elf man was saying, that kind men have approached that mirror and realized that they were terrible human beings, or brave men would run away screaming from what they see in that mirror. Yeah, I'm just like, oh, that's... Yeah, that's...
Could you imagine if there was a mirror that actually did that, could actually see
I don't know if I could look into it, man. I don't think I would trust myself. That is a lot.
Just make sure that everybody in the world had to go to that mirror at one point in time just to confront yourself.
Yeah. Maybe that should be the test at the pearly gates. Right?
Maybe it should be the test at the White House.
Yeah, you think? Good God, that's fantastic. But I thought that was just, that was just a really profound thing to put in a movie. Yeah. To put in any story, let alone a children's story. But yeah, the idea of like self-reflection and seeing if you can come to terms with all of yourself, including the worst parts of yourself, I think. And
then Bastian was what he saw.
And Bastian was what he saw.
And it's like he came to terms with it. Like, even... Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, it's interesting, because when Bastian first read the thing, he threw the book.
Yeah.
Because he was like, this is getting weird. Like, this is too much, man.
Yeah. But it was cool, too, now that you bring that up, when he sees himself... When Atreyu sees himself as a little boy, that is a complete juxtaposition of when he's first introduced, right? When he approaches...
right.
Yeah, when he approaches the court or whatnot in the palace, and then everyone says, you're just a little boy. And he's like, nope, I am a warrior. But no, he's still just a little boy inside, in spite of his bravery, which is valid, but he is a little boy, right? So, yeah, man, this movie
it's deep. I really liked it for its deep, and you just have to sit. It's one of those movies where I think the fact that it's slow and it's a slow burn really lends to being just fairly introspective and contemplating the structure of the story and the themes, the imagery. I genuinely, Goonies really invigorates that part of me that wants to go on an adventure, and then the NeverEnding Story really invigorates the part of me that likes to analyze and dissect things and observe the innermost workings of things. So I think in terms of the movies we selected for one another, I think it was really good.
I think so. Movies. I don't think I even. Yeah, that just happened accidentally too, right?
They're both 80s movies. And
80s movies.
Really great 80s movies.
Yeah, but yeah, I really much enjoyed the experiences of watching these two movies back to back. I just wish I had loved the Goonies because I see how much joy it brings to people. And then even recently during the quarantine, Josh Gad got the whole crew together, the whole cast, and even Spielberg and Donner together to talk about the movie, which is fantastic. So, I just wish I liked it as much as everybody else did, but I think maybe it's just due to age and whatnot. And a friend of mine, he once explained it very well to me. He was like, the reason why you might not enjoy the classics as much as everybody else is that you've seen those ideas and tropes repeated so many times in the movies that followed it that you're probably just used to it now. So then seeing the original thing might not have the same wow factor because you've already seen it recycled again and again and again. In the projects that followed it, right? Yeah,
I would also venture to say that a lot of it might be that the way stories are told now are very different than the way stories were told then. I don't know if there's any kids movie right now that is as high energy, everybody talking over each other and rambunctious as the Goonies is.
Do they even make? Can you think of the last kids movies that can even stand up to either of these two? The last one I can think of is Coraline. I'm trying. The stop motion one. And Paranorman, again, another stop motion.
But in terms of live action movies.
In terms of live action,
what live action kids movies have there been in the past? There's probably a few, but I can't quite think.
Within the last 10 years, I'm trying really hard to think. I feel like
maybe we're just old.
Maybe we're just really old, yeah. I can think of plenty of 90s kids movies that, of course, again, formed my childhood. Jumanji is a great one.
Jumanji is a beautiful movie. That movie is the CG has not aged well. And so there's some aspects of it you're like, this is really dated, but it's still such a great ride.
It's a great one.
Oh my goodness, Jumanji's good.
Yeah, but I guess the remake of Jumanji, would that be considered a kids movie? But there's no kids in it, that's the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Have you watched the new Jumanji?
No.
It's
I hear it's good.
It's a good sequel because it takes from what
Is it an actual sequel? Is it connected?
Yeah, it's connected to it.
It's connected to the Robin Williams version?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah,
wow.
it's the way they connect it is quite interesting.
Okay.
And the thing I like about it is that it honors the concept of the old thing, but it does something new for itself.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it's a worthy successor.
Okay.
Particularly for contextualizing it for today's audience, as I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, maybe it might be added to the list.
Sure enough.
Yeah, but certainly this will not be our last 80s edition.
Yes.
80s nostalgic trip. So I really enjoyed these two movies.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. So until next time.
Until next
time, everyone, thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on these movies, please share your experiences with us. And if you can explain to us what the hell was up with the orange juice and the egg smoothie, we would very much appreciate that too. Maybe even more so. So, other than that, everyone, please take care during these precarious times. Stay safe. Wear your freaking mask, for God's sakes. And that's it.
And watch movies.
And watch movies. Bye.
Bye.